I started with PvP content and gameplay tutorials, daily shorts to make sure I was putting anything out there. No voice, no edits, no plan. Just a player trying to make the most out of their games by putting everything up on YouTube. A million views later, I've got something to say. Hey, Grimmer here, and for my 500th video today, I'm celebrating hitting the 2,000 subscribers milestone as well as the 1 million views milestone. This has been a journey spanning nearly 4 years, and it's crazy to see how far this channel has come. Of course, none of this would be possible without all of you. I would like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to every single one of you who tuned in, even all of you who just watched one video for 1 second. There's never been a more perfect opportunity to celebrate this little channel's existence and its growth throughout the years with every single one of you who made it a reality. But this isn't just a celebration, it's a report card. When I first started, YouTube Shorts was all I knew how to make. It was fun, it was fast, it was low effort, and it really let me get into a daily uploading routine, even if some of the content wasn't all that. Over time though, it started to feel empty. I was putting in the same amount of relatively low effort and getting back an equally low video performance, with the occasional spike which by this point I consider as simply a fluke. At this point I called myself GR. I just chose 2 random letters out of the alphabet. It was a really simple name, a little too simple now that I think about it. And then I changed my name to Grimrock because, you know, the G for Grim and the R for Rock. But then I changed it out again because there was actually a game called Legend of Grimrock that I never heard of before and didn't want to associate because I wasn't making content on that game. So I lengthened it to a Grimu Rock before finally settling on a shorter version. Initially I used to call myself Grimma, I believe, but because the English automatic subtitles for YouTube caught that as the word groomer with the UK accent, I actually switched the way I pronounced it to Grimmer just because I didn't want to call myself a groomer on the internet because that would be horrible. As, you know, it's just an easier to remember shorter version that wouldn't get misconstrued by the YouTube subtitles. The content I was making in the early days started getting repetitive. Even as I shifted over to cover other games and expand my repertoire to Dokkan and Grand Cross, the content I made across those games were largely the same. It was then in the same style too, no voiceovers, no nothing. It was literally just the raw video, chopped down and dragged around whatever mobile editing software I was using to fit the frame and time limitation of YouTube Shorts, which back in the day was 60 seconds. So long as I uploaded daily, I could show the world that I was consistent. But in the process of doing that, I ended up showing how I barely changed over time. In between certain periods as well, I took long breaks to focus on other parts of my life, which usually meant that I would have to halt video production altogether. The funny thing about that is how I would get consistently low views on my videos because even after the indefinite hiatus, I didn't change my style or really anything regarding my content. I even tried going back and forth with making landscape long-form videos as well. Back in the day, it wasn't even that long, as the watch hours from those were what I really needed for the channel. It started off very erratic, a collection of videos in the form of a short burst of content. Gauntlet videos, summoning videos, and PvP videos. At that point I started to make a series, it's a series called Supreme Saturdays, and that's like the only real example that I have. And it was a way for me to manage my time and allow myself to branch out from the regular shorts I was making every other day, right? Just having just one really long form video every single week. And yet even so, nothing really changed in the grand scheme of things. Content-wise, there wasn't really any evolution, except for the fact that I shifted from purely using text in those videos, which was just a dark age for me, to using a voiceover to finally be confident enough to actually use my real voice. In terms of how I propped up my videos with the proper metadata and the most appealing thumbnail and title to grab the attention of the audience, I was consistently trash at that too. I used to use a presumably legitimate version of Adobe Photoshop CS3 that was given out by my school, which was still on my laptop at that point. The thumbnails I made felt plain, present, but unimpressive. I knew I wanted more. Not just more views, more reach, obviously more subs, but also more content that I could be proud of. I realized I needed to put in more effort, and honestly, so did the people watching. So, marked by my 1000 subscriber special a year ago, I switched thumbnail styles and shifted the focus on my channel to long-form video content. I started featuring my old logo, which was just an Ultimate Gohan from Legends at that point, in my thumbnails and shifted over to using Canva. Yes, Canva, please don't tear me apart in the comments. The second season of Supreme Saturdays had a significantly prettier look to them. It was all voiced and was actually done fairly consistently every week. As time went on, I knew I could do even better, especially when I noticed that discussion-based content did far better performance-wise and was actually a lot more fun to make, which is why my most recent bits of content have been centered around that idea, adjusting to whatever the latest topic was, and I ultimately decided to shift away from making PvP content, at least for now. As the channel continued to grow and evolve, So did Dragon Ball Legends, but not always in the right ways. As a content creator, I obviously have an unspoken obligation to constantly pay some extra attention towards the state of the game, to make sure I cover all my bases every time I actually start making a piece of content. There have been so many changes since I first started out as a content creator, and the game has definitely experienced its own metamorphosis along with the channel after these nearly 4 years of time have passed. In terms of fundamental changes to the game, there have definitely been a few. I started making content basically at the same time as the big UI change prior to what we're seeing today, so nothing more than that, relating to the UI that is. I believe I was already a content creator when Hoi Poi capsules were introduced, and I think they've been a great free-to-play source of celebration items which continue to be a help even today. In terms of growth mechanics, I was already making content during the introduction of arts boosting, so I was making content before arts boosting was even a thing. And at first it definitely felt like a premium growth mechanic considering how expensive it was, and you could only really work on it slowly over time and build up slow and steady essentially. Of course, I've been a close observer of the removal of soul boosting as well, which I believe is a net positive because of how much more practical it makes things, especially because the soul boosting Z missions that drop CC on my end have been completely exhausted. Moving forward, I do hope they add new ways to farm CC with character growth the same way, just because that's something that a lot of people are actually complaining about. I'm also happy to be a part of the release of Slot 1 rerolling for equipment. I just hope they make it more available for free-to-play players, but overall, changes in this field have been overall positive, though they don't cut down the effort needed to commit to this game as a content creator. In terms of characters and meta, there have obviously been toxic units and metas with zero fun. Like a natural example, the Hybrid Saiyans meta, with Zenkai LF Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan from the BoJack movie, as well as the other Gohan, the future Gohan. OG LF Future Gohan, that is. This is just an example of overpowering a unit, an entire tag, an entire team even, just beyond belief to the point where there was practically zero enjoyment when it came to PvP. Skipping past anniversaries and Legends festivals in between, there hasn't been a stage in the meta quite as toxic, though we did have times like with Ultra Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black, where it really came close. A lot of the units who dominated the meta weren't toxic, especially after that Gohan era. They were just really strong, and only slightly and relatively overpowered in some cases. I'll go so far as to say that most of them had counterplay as an option to combat whatever they were doing. All the way to today, where we're actually dealing with a tag like Daima, a situation that practically mirrors hybrids back then, with overly dominant units, essentially all-rounders with no competition. These kinds of hyper-dominant units in the meta really affect how I go about making content. So long as these units exist, there will always be a much higher chance of losing every match and not getting the footage I want. Not only does it prevent me from getting more CC at the end of the season, it also turns making content into an almost unenjoyable experience. And so it's actually quite funny how, from my YouTube all-time recap, we're back to square one with how the meta is being shaped and treated. Some things never change, I guess. In terms of monetization and summons, there have obviously been some changes, new banner formats as well as changes to older ones. When we're talking specifically about sales, especially in the shop, I'm as close to a bumbling buffoon as you could get, because I'm obviously a free-to-play player. I don't spend any money on the shop at all. Going deeper into summons though, the Legends step-up format that we see for a lot of LFs nowadays, like with Kid Goku and Demon King Piccolo, was actually changed a while back, and it's been a good format since. The wild thing with summons is that as time has gone by, especially if you start counting from when I started being a content creator, it's only introduced new trash, that being the limited Rising banner format for game original units like Goku and Bardock, as well as every single Ultra Rising banner that have not only been unchanged, but are fundamentally just horrible. Summoning definitely got more demanding though, considering how there's now many more units you need to take a look at and potentially try to get, because across rarities, the frequency of meta unit drops have only increased. Now, you don't need to just worry about Ultras or just worry about Legends Limited units. There's some 1% Sparkings out there that can really shape the meta and how you're supposed to battle in practical PvP. You can clearly see that as Legends evolved, PvP became a more intense sport. The game began to offer more content and everything else from banners to character growth continued to expand. But this is not just change, it's pressure. As a content creator, it's pressure to keep up, to pull new units, to put on a greater show on the channel, and most importantly, to survive the content treadmill. As all these changes began happening in Legends, I joined all the content creators in covering whatever the game was offering. To this day, I will still put the spotlight on all changes happening to the game, as it's news that some players might potentially be interested in. But this channel isn't just about reacting to changes, it shouldn't be. It should also be about challenging the way we think about them. From my experience as a content creator, specifically one that tangles with Dragon Ball Legends, I learned that uploading gameplay is easy, but uploading something that really matters, really isn't. Because even if you were fighting the toughest opponents out there or playing a stage of PvE content on the highest difficulty, at its core, gameplay videos are very much play, record, upload, repeat. Or I guess record, play, upload, repeat, you would obviously start recording before you were playing, but whereas a piece of content that truly matters takes time to create. You have a script to write with points based on true data that you need to verify. You not only have to make sure that what you're talking about is relevant, you also have to make sure to provide value to the conversation and deliver it in a way that can reel in an audience while everyone can actually understand what you're saying. It's still a pretty tricky balance, for me at least. It's kind of a shame how the videos that perform better are almost always the expected obligatory showcase, breakdown, or review videos to coincide with an update, and I think those kinds of videos are great, by the way. I don't want to shade any particular content creator who makes those videos because they do give insight on how the game is for the moment. But that's just the thing. Every PvP clip fades, every meta dies, but real ideas, they're rare, and they last. A lot of people make PvP videos, and sure, they may point out some issues, flaws to the characters, or flaws to the meta, but it hardly becomes the main point being delivered in the video. A lot of people make quick predictions and talk about changes, but rarely do they take a deeper dive into how those changes will impact the game in the long run. A lot of people also love to complain about the problems in the game, but rarely does anyone actually try to provide a solution, at least as a fruit of their own thinking. That's why I believe that the real content people should make, more specifically surrounding Dragon Ball Legends, even if you could technically apply this to any other game, is the stuff that brings something new to the table, something insightful that could help everyone enjoy the game better. Something that could spark a change, that could light the fire for other people to voice what they think about the game. And I definitely don't want to make it seem as if I'm already there. I've made that same mistake before, focusing on quantity and trends over quality and substance. But that's precisely why I want every one of my uploads moving forward to just have a pulse, to talk about the problems the game is facing and how those problems should be dealt with, to invite the whole community to discuss the long-term things all of us should actually care about. So what's next? Where do I go from here? 2,000 subscribers, 1 million views. It's such an insane achievement, especially looking back at the kind of content I used to make and how low effort it was. I'm grateful for everything, for every view, every like, every comment and interaction, and obviously every sub, says that's how we got here. To everyone who's watched, interacted with videos, clicked on, and maybe even immediately clicked off or stayed for the whole show. Thank you. Thank you very much. I just can't believe that many people tune in to watch me, and obviously most people are here for the content and not me necessarily, but after the misses and the flops, the fails and inconsistencies, I'm genuinely so relieved to be reassured so concretely that I'm going in the right direction. I don't really have much left to say. I'm certainly grateful. I'm also certainly not done. I want to move forward making the best content I can make, while continuing to evolve as a content creator to do what I love the most about this thing that I'm doing, which is creating. I hope all of you who've stuck around this long will continue to join me for the ride. And yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this one. Bye. Thanks for watching. Never stay perfect. Always get better. Peace. And once again, thank you. If this is your first time here, check out my latest video here. Who knows, maybe you'll really enjoy it. And as a message to everyone, just get ready. This channel is evolving.